beat, yes sir. 23.7 the beat, ooh, yes sir. Still beat, still beat. Straight talk, straight talk, oh yeah, straight talk. Oh yes sir, with DJ Hilson. Straight talk, straight talk, straight talk, with DJ Hilson. Straight talk, oh yeah. Straight talk, oh yeah. Straight talk, oh yeah. With DJ Hilson. Straight talk, oh yeah. Straight talk, oh yeah. With DJ Hilson. On the 3.7 the beat. Yeah. On the 3.7 the beat. Yeah. On the 3.7 the beat. On the 3.7 the beat.
Hey, Muskegon. A beautiful day today. Sun is shining. It's warm out. Summertime. Great to be live in the studio and I guess live on the camera too.
Yes, sir.
I always appreciate, even though we don't do pre-production for my show, at least PA does a little pre-production text, lets me know what to expect. Although I'm always prepared to expect the unexpected when I walk into the studio. But it's good to be here. Good to be live. Good to be with you as always, PA, for this show. And so, again, let's have it.
Let's have it, right?
Let's do it.
Well, it's a lot happening, since the last time we talked. Of course, the biggest news around town is the raid or the search warrants, City of Muskegon Heights, and this whole massive influx of law enforcement that swooped into town on Thursday morning.
Yes, Thursday.
How does a collaboration of federal law enforcement and local law enforcement, how did that come about together? Like, who was in charge?
What is nice from my perspective is that if an outside agency is going to come into Muskegon County, and this has happened on occasion where it's not necessarily the federal government, but other counties, in particular in drug investigations, if somebody from Muskegon maybe goes up to Oceana, or we've had some folks go as far as Manistee to, conduct drug sales, and their drug teams are kind of monitoring that and following that. And then ultimately it may lead to them coming down to do a search warrant. Typically, the courtesy, I should say, is to say, hey, just so you know, we're going to be in your county doing this. And a lot of times it sometimes comes with an ask for some assistance, not necessarily in conducting the search, but maybe perimeter security or transport if necessary, kind of thing. And so, my preference, and again, whether it rises to the level of my office, it's always appreciated when at least somebody knows, whether it be myself or one of my staff members knows that something is happening. Because what happens is, kind of what happened last Thursday, where people start either calling me or, call other folks to say, hey, what the heck is going on? And,
Right.
The worst position to be in for me is not knowing, so that I can't give at least some intelligent answer. And that's happened a couple of times where we've had outside agencies come in and conduct business in Muskegon County and I not know about it. And it was significant enough where I get phone calls from community leaders saying, hey, what the heck's going on? And it's a little embarrassing for me to say, well, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
If I truly don't know.
Right.
And then I go and I had this incident happen not too long ago where, if you recall, the DEA did a news story. The agent actually did an on-camera news story with one of our local reporters about, drug activity and how dangerous it was here in Muskegon.
Oh, wow.
And nobody let anybody know. Nobody in law enforcement knew that was happening. I didn't know it was happening. And I end up in a meeting with community leaders going, what's this all about? And that's when I get upset, because it's just like you can't come in and essentially light something on fire and walk
And
away
then leave.
and go, yep, I've done my job. Sorry for you. And so I mean, I don't get angry very often. I mean, I try not to get angry very often, but I was kind of ticked off, and I let this agent know. I mean, I've never paced my office on a telephone yelling at somebody before, and I did on that occasion because I just thought it was unprofessional, it was inappropriate, and I let him know that. But so to answer your question, and if I use Thursday as an example, that was a very well coordinated effort, well coordinated from the federal side, well coordinated from the state side, and then certainly from a local side, so that I knew relatively early on what was going on. Why, for example, why the federal agencies were now asking the state police in my office to get involved. There are specific reasons why we were brought into the loop. And then ultimately, we sat and waited because really we were at the behest of some of the federal agencies whose investigation was sort of the catalyst to all this. I think what I can comfortably say to the community is that, what the search warrant at City Hall was not the focus of the investigation. Okay. There was other focuses of I'll say a federal investigation going on, which ultimately from that, some of the fruits of that led to us focusing in on some things that were at least seemingly going on at City Hall with some folks, which for us to help our investigation and make a determination whether or not there are criminal charges involved required us to obtain documents and things off of servers, computer servers. And so that's why, as a result of everything, there was a team assigned to conduct the search of City Hall and conduct some interviews at City Hall at the same time that the other 5 residences were being searched. And it was, like I said, a very really, from a law enforcement perspective, it was a well-coordinated effort. So really, to answer your question directly, really, it comes down to the basics of communication. In other words, if there's something going on, I don't necessarily have to know the details, especially if ultimately I'm not the one that's going to be making any of the charging decisions in that particular investigation. So when federal agencies are involved, typically us county prosecutors don't get involved in what happens next because they're seeking indictments through the federal grand jury system, and the U.S. Attorney's Office is prosecuting those cases. Now, as often happens, sometimes certain investigations or individuals or evidence doesn't reach whatever their thresholds are, and then we as locals say, okay, well, we'll pick up the slack where you guys apparently can't because of whatever policy and procedure. But in this particular instance, a lot of the reasons why the state police got involved and ultimately my office got involved was sort of, I'll say at the middle or tail end of the investigation, things were starting to surface that suggested that it was an area that the feds were not interested in, and I was interested in, quite frankly, and said that we would certainly look at whatever state charges were available based on the activity that we were seeing and hearing during this other investigation, and ultimately we'll see what the fruits of our search of City Hall brings as to whether it enhances our ability to, make some charging decisions or not. But it was necessary.
So all of those raids were connected?
Well, they were connected in the sense that they were all Best way to describe this is that they had to happen at the same time, I guess,
Okay.
in order to preserve the integrity of the investigation. Because searching a particular couple of residences would have, I think, gotten other folks maybe nervous about what was happening, and we would have missed an opportunity if we delayed being a part of that. And so, there, without obviously I can't divulge
Right. Exactly.
the specific facts yet. And again, just so everybody's aware, a lot of stuff is going to eventually surface. I mean, things are going to come out, and once that happens, I can probably talk a little more freely about it. But until that time, I have to be very careful about what I say. But ultimately, there was enough connection in the 5 residents in City Hall where it had to be done at the same time in order to really preserve this investigation.
Do you expect some charges?
Well, certainly, at least going into Thursday, based off of what we were told and what we knew, it looked like we were heading in the direction of some potential criminal charges. And again, it's you assume, you make some assumptions going into that, and then you look to see if there's evidence to buffer those assumptions into something else. And ultimately, there's a lot of things to look at. There's a lot of things to kind of sift through in order to determine whether our assumptions and theories are correct. But I do anticipate some criminal charges, and I don't have a timeline when that's going to happen. But certainly, again, I'm letting investigators now sort of sort through the things that they were able to collect, and see what we have, and ultimately, I anticipate probably this happening in some phases, because again, there when we're talking about financial crimes, or investigations, I should say, into financial crimes, most of that is supported by documentation, and there's a lot of, when you have a document related investigation, that takes time because you're essentially following the paper
trail.
right? You're following the paper trail, and that may lead to having to search other things in order to kind of see where that paper trail goes. So yeah, I mean, there's going to be some time invested in going through that. This morning I had a conversation with the lieutenant of the state police, who was sort of heading up the state police side of this thing, and we talked about what reasonable and realistic timelines look like for them to organize and then go through the things that we were able to obtain during that search.
Was a lot of stuff, a lot of information.
Yeah, it's a lot of information. I mean, it's both digital and I mean, thankfully in the digital age, a lot of paper is now digital, and so it's a little bit easier to search. It's a little bit easier to scan and look at, as opposed to back in the day where you were taking out banker boxes and you were
Right.
taking one file at a time, and you're going through each piece of paper, one piece of paper at a time, and hoping to see something that might be of interest. The digital is a little bit easier. Now, I think you still have to be diligent in how you search, because if you put in the wrong search term, or if you're not describing it right in the search engine, you may end up with a goose egg, not knowing that in fact it's there. You're calling, you're
Right.
searching it under the wrong name.
Wow. Drugs though. Well, how do DEA at City Hall, like drugs, City Hall?
Well,
it makes it seem like it's a drug
Yeah,
operation at
yeah.
City Hall.
I mean,
right?
that was a. I mean, that's a personnel thing. I mean, the way that the search teams were split up, they were split up with all different agencies represented in each team. I will say this, that I don't think anybody was anticipating or expecting to find any drugs at City Hall.
Right. Okay.
It's just a matter of when you have a limited number of bodies, and you need certain numbers just to, one, obviously maintain the security of the areas that you're searching, and certainly maintain the security of the building itself, so that people aren't coming and going while the search is going on. You have to have law enforcement to do that. And again, we had multiple agencies, and everybody was kind of doing something else. And everybody likes to wear their jacket that says who they are. So yeah, I mean, just so everybody's is clear, there was no expectation or anticipation that we were going to find drugs at City Hall.
Good. All right, that's clear. And the timeline with the federal government is different from the state timeline, right? So you could do something, and the feds might wait months.
Yeah. I mean, certainly they go through a different process. They have what's called the grand jury, where they're presenting, where we as prosecutors, local prosecutors, I should say, we're like our own grand jury, right? We take an investigation, and we read it, and we go through it, and we decide, okay, is there a crime that's being presented to us? I mean, do the facts support a violation of a criminal statute? And if it does, who's violating that statute? Whereas in the grand jury, you have citizens, and you have a assistant U.S. attorney presenting witnesses. So, for example, instead of reading a police report, they've got the police officer on the stand testifying to the police report, if that makes sense. And then the citizens are presented a bill of indictment, and they decide whether or not there's probable cause to believe a crime is committed, and what crimes those are. For us, sort of the check and balance on that, so people don't get excited about this idea that, well, I mean, maybe we should do the grand jury. Mm-hmm. In Michigan, there really isn't a grand jury. I mean, there's what's called a one-man grand jury, which is a judge. Okay. But in Michigan, the check and balance of that is, once prosecutors make a decision and they charge a case, the next step is, if it's a misdemeanor, the next step is a trial, right? So we have to prove more than just probable cause. We have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. If it's a felony, it's a preliminary examination, where, like a grand jury, we have to present to the court evidence that shows that, in fact, there's probable cause to believe that a crime had occurred, and probable cause to believe that the person we've charged committed that crime. And an independent judge, makes that determination. So there is a check and balance there, to a local prosecutor's decision. And I mean, we have preliminary examinations on felonies every day. Every day in the courthouse, if you walk in, one of the district courtrooms will be just straight preliminary examinations for that day. So that check and balance has been, I mean, for the 27 years I've been doing this, that's been the check and balance, and it works really well. Gives defense lawyers an opportunity to cross-examine witnesses if they want, to test whether or not, in fact, there's probable cause that a crime was committed. And it's done in front of an independent arbiter or reviewer, that being the judge.
Now, you mentioned that one person was arrested Thursday.
Yeah.
What kind of crime?
My understanding is that the person that was arrested, it was arrested by the federal government because that person was on federal parole.
Okay.
And that's the reason why they were apprehended.
Okay. Wow. It's a lot. The search warrant. Did you do the search warrant, or that's a federal document search warrant?
No, one of my assistants drafted the search warrant for all the locations, and so but worked hand in hand with the federal government and our local government to make sure, our local state police, I should say, to make sure that we put enough in that search warrant so that a reviewing judge, again, I mean, it's just because we sign on the dotted line doesn't make it so, and a judge has to review a search warrant to make sure that there's enough PC, probable cause, in that document to support entering into somebody's residence, or in this case, City Hall, and not only entering in, but then seizing the items that we listed out in the search warrant. So yeah, one of my assistants drafted that.
And that judge that signed that, was that a local judge or a federal judge?
No, we actually had a judge from a different county review it and sign it.
Why is that?
Well, it was to maintain the integrity of the investigation, because when you take for example, when we take the search warrant to just a garden variety search warrant, when we authorize a search warrant, it goes down to the magistrate or the judge here in Muskegon County. They keep a record of that, and they keep it. And so we felt, at least for now, that we didn't trust our local folks, right, but we wanted to keep it out of county. And I will say that there were conversations with our district bench as to that we were doing that, and they were okay with that. So they knew that we were having an outside judge review this search warrant.
So this was just real quiet. Nobody knew what was going on except the agents.
Real quiet.
Wow.
Real quiet.
Knowing what you know, were you like upset with some of the things you saw preliminary?
Oh, really upset. I mean, that, you know, when I was in I about 2 months ago, I was in a meeting with some of with all the agencies, and we were discussing, you know, kind of what the strategy was, and, you know, what was going to happen next, and kind of what they were waiting for, and we're talking about some of these ancillary matters, and I was really upset. I was upset because, you know, I don't know. Nobody is perfect. Nobody's perfect, but I've been doing this job for far too long, and appreciate what it means to be an elected official. So when the citizens of Muskegon County, or name the city, elect individuals to certain positions, they do that with this idea that they feel that individual not only is going to represent their interests, but also represents this idea of public trust. And to me, when public trust is violated, that bothers me. Bothers me a lot. Only because I know from my own experience how important when people say, okay, DJ, we trust you to be the Muskegon County prosecutor. We trust that you are going to do the job to the best of your ability, and you're going to you know, hold people accountable for the actions, and you're going to make sound decisions, and that's not to say that, you know, I don't make mistakes, or maybe I wish I would have made a different decision, but overall, I take that responsibility very seriously. And when people, you know, use the office or unoffice for other means other than what you're there for, that bothers me a lot. It bothers me a lot, and I was really upset.
I could tell in your voice Thursday when we talked.
Yeah, I was really upset. So, you know, again, we'll see as the dust settles what that means, but you know, certainly my intention is to do my job, and to make sure that if there is wrongdoing, that people are held accountable. I truly believe in that. And for me, you know, it doesn't really matter who you are, where you come from. That never plays a role in the decisions I make. I understand. I've been doing this long enough. I mean, I understand when we're talking about, for example, police officers, or you know, community leaders, people who are sort of visible, and when they are involved in, you know, potential criminal investigations, potential criminal charges, I appreciate and understand what that means when we make that decision to charge a case. And so that diligence is going to be in this particular investigation. But at the end of the day, if there was wrongdoing, if there was violations of our criminal statutes, the community can rest assured that people will be held accountable. I just strongly believe in that. And that to me is, I think, one of the things every 4 years, when I take my oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the state of Michigan, as well as the United States Constitution, and I agree to uphold the laws of the land, I am making that oath and that promise that I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to do my job.
Indy O'Reilly said DJ is touching on a lack of quality character that we have willing to run anymore here in Muskegon County. We need a lot less polarization to get those who can lead effectively without worrying about the status and pride. And the problem, he said, Ken Under said, the problem is not just in the Heights. Those running are not running for the right reason. So, wow, that's a lot. So this investigation been going on for a while then.
Well, I would say that I will say that the drug investigation has been going on for a while. Yes. again, a lot of what now locally are dealing with probably was starting to surface, and I don't know the exact timeline, but certainly it wasn't the target of the, I'll say, the initial investigation.
Just took you down the road.
Took it, yeah, right. And that, listen, that happens in a lot of cases where all of a sudden, you think you're investigating one thing, and all of a sudden, boom, now you're investigating two things because of what you start to uncover. And it's not, I mean, it's unusual in the sense that, of the individuals and in the areas that we're talking about, but it's not unusual in the life of a criminal investigation. These sometimes end up going in directions and offering you other avenues and possibilities that you didn't anticipate when you first started.
Wow. Councilman William Kitchen said, I can tell he's upset and is carrying the weight of what is going on. You guys went to council people houses without warrants, though. How did that work?
Well, I guess you have to help me understand that.
I was told that I know a council person.
Mm-hmm.
They went to their house, asked for government documents, and I don't think there was a warrant. At least that warrant that was posted, didn't say personal houses. So maybe it's other search warrants.
Well, I would say that, again, not knowing, I mean, I'm not going to speculate, not knowing all the details because I wasn't at any of the locations. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, people can give consent too. So, for example, if typically if you got nothing to hide, if somebody came to my house and said, hey, we need to search your house for drugs, have at it.
Go ahead.
Have at it.
You don't say I need a search warrant?
No, have at it, guys. I mean, just don't don't break walls and don't turn things over, but
Right.
Go ahead. I got nothing to hide.
Right.
A lot of times for electronic devices, computers and cell phones, law enforcement will say, hey, would you mind if we take a look at your cell phone or your computer? And
Mhm.
people can consent to searches.
Okay.
That's certainly, that happens all the time, quite frankly.
Wow. Okay. Last question, because we got several other stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think there might be multiple arrests?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on that. I mean, I've only, the only information that I have is sort of some of the highlights that were provided to me, not only by my staff who've been working closely with law enforcement, but also law enforcement. And so I'm actually waiting to see what we essentially uncover based on, what we were looking for from a document standpoint. So I'm not going to speculate as to how many or who, because ultimately
I don't want to know who.
Ultimately, we got to let the evidence speak for itself, and so
Right.
I need the evidence to talk to me about what we have and what we're seeing. And so until that point, I mean, I'm not going to speculate.
But a federal document was like unsealed probably within hours after this. Like the federal charges or federal document was unsealed and shared online.
Well, the search warrant was.
There was a federal federal document.
Oh,
that tied in. It mentioned one of the houses that was in the search warrant.
Oh, okay.
And it
Okay.
was like out of Grand Rapids, so federal charges or something.
Well, if in fact, I mean, it's just like anything else. So if we issue charges, though, that's public record, right? And feds are no different. If they've already issued charges, because again, you got to remember the feds have a nationwide reach, right? Nationwide reach. I work within the boundaries of Muskegon County, so as was kind of coming out, there was a former Muskegon resident that was living in Houston who I don't know, maybe that's what you're talking about. He was charged, and that may have spun out, that indictment may have been happening or happened prior to the search warrant. I mean, that certainly can be the case too. Where a grand jury could indict somebody and they couple going down to arrest and search at the same time.
Right.
And so they arm themselves with a search warrant and they have the arrest warrant in hand. I mean, that sometimes happens here where, for example, if the Michigan State Police emergency response team or our local emergency response team is called into action and they're being asked to execute a search warrant, they typically will ask for an arrest warrant on top of that. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with liability and all that other stuff. So if we have the ability to do that, we will authorize an arrest warrant, and they will have that in hand at the same time they're executing the search warrant.
Wow. This was a big operation. So not just Muskegon, it was Houston, Texas, and all this stuff. Okay, what is money laundering? What is that?
Money laundering?
Yeah.
Well, that's where man, if you ever watched any old gangster mob movies, that was always, one of the things that they would do, or they would get money from illegal means. Let's go back to the Al Capone days. Capone was making money selling liquor during Prohibition.
Okay.
And so he, in order to clean that dirty money, you had to use it for other means. So a lot of times, that's why casinos are always watched, because people will it's I mean, you go to Vegas, how unusual it is for somebody to whip out $10,000 at a table.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
That's not unusual.
Right.
And so you clean the money by doing stuff like that.
But what do they get out of that? They lose.
Oh, what
You
if
go to
they,
casino,
what,
you
if,
lose
what
it.
if they win? What if they win?
Then they can say they won that money or play the lottery, a bunch of lottery.
Sure.
That's money laundering?
That's in essence, in its simplest form, that's money.
Trying to clean the money.
Clean the money. Show that that the money was legitimately earned as opposed to illegally earned. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Wow. It's a lot going on. I know when I send money, Western Union over across the seas, I had to do a lot of like, what's this for, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I get it, because in Tanzania they have money laundering. So
Sure.
when money come to me from there, they're asked to, why is it going to America? What's the purpose?
Mm-hmm.
And all that stuff. So I get it from that form.
Yeah.
But the legal form, cleaning money. Okay. All right, DJ. We can talk about some other stuff now.
Okay.
This is a lot.
Okay.
Honestly, I was up early in the morning, when this stuff happened.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that it probably messed with you mentally too, because these people.
Yeah.
And your political career is on the line.
Yeah, I don't know about on the line.
It might not be on the line, but it could be.
But listen, I mean, well, again, for me, here's the problem. I think some people, and one of the things that I've grown and matured in is this idea that I cannot worry about, politics, because once you start worrying about politics, especially in what I do, that's when your decision making becomes not clear. You're not making clear decisions, and so I've long ago had this mindset that I'm going to sleep well at night, knowing that I made the best decision that I did, and if people are going to be upset because of this, that, or the other, or how can you do that because you're a Democrat? Get out of here with that.
Right.
I mean, come on. That's ridiculous. I can't live my career like that. And, people want to be upset with me and they want to say, well, screw Hilson and whatever. I mean, you don't, it's easy on the outside to look in and do that. Sit in my seat, right? Sit in my seat when you've got you've got the citizens of Muskegon Heights, who deserve to be not only well represented, but deserve to have folks that are looking to move that city in a direction forward. That's who, for me, that's because I represent all of Muskegon County,
right?
From north, south, east, and west. Those borders are my people, and I don't care what party you come from. I don't care what house you live in. It doesn't matter. I go back to this idea. I took an oath to represent you, and I can't let all that other noise play a part in how I represent a person.
Shauna Bolton Evans said, DJ keeps it all the way real. So thank you so much, Shauna, for the comments. Got a lot of comments online. Mike Wash saying this is great public service. You being on radio, let's be real. 20 years ago, the previous prosecutor would not have talked publicly about any of this. You haven't gave us no clues, haven't threw no names out. Right. but it just would have been a raid, been done, and we'll hear about it whenever we hear about it. And so the fact that you are being transparent, you put the search warrant out there when it was time to be put out. You did a press release the day of. You it was like been very, communicating with the public, and we appreciate that. We've made a lot of progress in that department. Sherry Leak case.
Yeah.
This is she charged with second-degree murder?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So you sent me that text. I chuckled, and I wasn't going to talk to you about. I figured I would just deal with this while I'm on air. Right. If you recall, so the timeline of this case, initially we charged manslaughter, with the understanding, and at least internally, that we were going to, and this was prior to us receiving a lot of different information, including, the autopsy and toxicology report of the young girl. And so my mindset was, all right, we got to do something out of the gate right away, but we're going to keep open the possibility that it could be something more. And ultimately got to the point where we had enough information where I felt comfortable in changing. This was right around the time of her preliminary examination, because we told her defense lawyer, hey, look, we're going to change this from manslaughter to open murder, just so you're aware. And obviously, if you're waiving her, we're waiving her to the circuit court with that understanding, which ultimately happened. And so what that means is that open murder is we'll say the statutory form of homicide here in Michigan. It leaves open the possibility for us to argue the various levels, first, second, manslaughter, right? It leaves open that possibility. But when it comes to trial, we actually have to pick. There is no conviction for open murder necessarily. We actually have to sort of pick a theory, and the jury has to decide whether or not we've got the evidence to support that theory, whether it's first, second, or manslaughter. So when we moved to open murder, the whole point is that the evidence, the information, all the evidence points to this idea that we feel we've got a good opportunity to argue second-degree murder and get a conviction on that. And again, this is all alleged nobody's convicting anybody of anything, but we feel that we have a strong enough case to do that. And so this week, I believe it was what our judges call the final pretrial. And in circuit court, both our circuit court judges have this. Every case has a final pretrial, and that's really kind of the drop dead date. Either you're going to plea if there's an offer to the offer, and maybe the court has made a sentence commitment, or if you decide not to, and then it's set for trial, then really there's nothing left to talk about, because we as an office aren't going to make that offer again. That offer is now dead. And we're just preparing for trial. And if you come trial morning, you have a change of heart, well, then you got to plead on the nose to whatever the charge is. And so what we've made very clear in this case to the defense lawyer is we are accepting nothing less than second-degree murder. Nothing less.
Wow.
We are prepared to, if you decide not to accept that, we are prepared to go to trial on that theory of second-degree murder. And so as I think most people saw, this is yesterday, I guess. Most people saw yesterday that opportunity to plea has come and gone, and so now we're preparing for trial. And in our theory at trial is going to be that allegedly Miss Lee committed the second degree murder.
Well, DJ, there's been a lot of comments, but people say they still love you. It might be mega. Somebody say it might be mega. We still love him. No, they didn't say that. They didn't say that.
No, hey, that's good. Thank you, kind.
Mega Hilson.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, they didn't say that. No, actually, a lot of love. Christopher Thomas said that's what we need. More public officials being transparent. Look, you guys can call in. We are live in the main studio. We're not in I don't know what we call the Amara Entertainment Studio. So we are live in the on-air studio. You can say it to DJ 231-722-8338. He's been working day and night. I can tell he hasn't got too much sleep.
Well,
So
listen,
I know a tired DJ when I see a tired DJ.
you, listen, I appreciate the comments. It's much appreciated. Not necessary. I mean, again, I chose this profession. I chose this job. I said yes to this idea that I wanted to hold this office, and so I appreciate and understand all the responsibility that comes with that. And look, I mean, I've had it both ways, man. I've had people upset with me. I've had people who love me, and so again, it comes with the territory. I At the end of the day, I just want to do my job, and whether or not it's the decisions I make are going to make people happy or sad or mad. I have to live with that as long as I know that I'm doing my job.
Getting ready to go to the phone line, but Denise Brown Grisham said, DJ, transparency gets my vote. Real talk. Hello, caller, you live with DJ Hilson. You got a question or comment?
Yes, I'm on there.
Yes, you're live on radio. Yes.
Hey, PA, good afternoon. Mr. Hilson, good afternoon. My
Good.
name is Jay Driver, calling from Houston, Texas.
Oh,
Lifelong resident of Muskegon and familiar with Muskegon Heights. I had a question on the raid last week. Is it typical when you serve a search warrant, the nature that you did last Thursday, that there's an individual named in it, and that individual certain property or certain things believed to be in that person's custody are part of that search warrant? And then when that person is put on leave, and I know they say that doesn't indicate guilt or innocence, but it's kind of difficult not to believe that that person may potentially be a target. And I know you can't talk specifically, but can you give us a general legal concept on that? I appreciate it. Thank you for taking my call. Keep up the good work, too. I met you years ago at the Bible study at Mount
oh
Olive.
man, that goes back. Yeah, that goes back a long time.
I met you for the first time. I was in town visiting my
Okay.
dad, and I was at that Bible
Yeah.
study. And I met you then. So
Yeah.
I've always been impressed with your work. Keep up the good work. We're very proud of what you do, and thank you for coming out and being with PA and sharing those things that we need to hear as the public. So we're very concerned about this in the Heights. So whatever you can do to share that question,
Yeah.
give us some insight.
Pastor Driver, listen to us online. And your daddy is the best taekwondo teacher in the history of Muskegon, Mr. JD Driver. Thank you.
Hey man, listen, my dad turned 99 last Thursday.
Wow.
Wow.
Give him my love, man. Please.
I sure will, PA. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Hilson.
You're welcome. So to answer the question, so by law, and this is, I mean, this will make sense to individuals. Again, when we talk about the Fourth Amendment and the rights under the Fourth Amendment to not be subject to unreasonable searches and seizures, that Fourth Amendment, constitutional amendment, has developed over time because it has had to catch up with things like technology, cell phones, computers, and all those things. And so as that has evolved, one of the things that legally we're required to do when we say that we're going to search a place, residence, car, phone, computer, we have to, with specificity, indicate what we're searching, because it's gotten to the point now where, including our own Michigan Supreme Court, where we have to establish a connection between what we're searching and the information we're providing the court in the affidavit. And if we can't show that connection, then the judges rightfully would say, well, I got to deny your search warrant because I don't see a connection between what you've written here and what you're asking to search. And so, I mean, do we name individuals every time? No, but in this particular case, we had to be specific in what we were looking for because of the information that we were providing the court in the affidavit. And again, we have to establish that connection. And so from a very generic sort of baseline answer, that's sort of how it works. I mean, and again, from a common sense standpoint, it makes sense. I mean, I can't say that I'm going to search PA's car and then talk about how all the activity we've seen is out of PA's house, right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And so again, there are some really well-established rules over time that really make us in law enforcement narrow down exactly what we're looking for, where we think we're going to find it, and again establish that connection between what we're saying we're searching and what we're searching for and who we're searching, and then the connection in the supporting what we call affidavit.
Well, to me, there was a lot of stuff in that search warrant.
Yeah, I mean that's
lot.
just the face of the document. And as I told you, and I'll let everybody else know, under the law, and this is both federal and state law, we are allowed to suppress the affidavit, so the supporting information, for a period of time. And there's a lot of good strategic reasons why we do that, especially in an open investigation, to protect the integrity of the investigation, and sometimes to protect individuals. We ask to have the affidavit sealed. Now, ultimately, if and when charges surface, that affidavit is required to be unsealed. And everybody who's a part of what's going on here recognizes that and knows that and understands that, once that is unsealed and it's out in the open in the public, you can't take it back. And so we're very cognizant of that fact and making sure that our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted before that eventually happens. And so again, it's not, nobody's hiding anything, but by law we're allowed to seal that until the appropriate time to have it unsealed.
Wow. Do spouses get charged with helping spouse?
Again, it just depends. I mean, really everything that we do in the prosecutor's office is fact determined, fact and circumstances. What do the facts tell me? So to answer your question, let's say husband, is a bank robber, and it just so happens that wife is his wheelman, right? So wife drives into the bank, husband gets out, robs the bank, gets back in, wife takes him back. All right. So she knows exactly what's going on. And not only does she know, she's also participating in some fashion, what we call aiding and abetting the bank robbery. And so with those facts, the wife is just as culpable as the husband, even though she did not go in the bank. She did not she did not rob the teller, but she aided and abetted in that by being the driver of the getaway car, and probably enjoying some of the illegal proceeds as well.
Some of the benefits.
Yes.
Wow. Why would since the IRS? I don't understand why would the IRS be involved in this kind of thing?
Well, again, we're talking about financial crime investigation, right? We're talking about and they certainly had the expertise, because you can't. I mean, you can, but you don't want to walk into a municipal building and unplug all the servers and take them out, right?
Right.
I mean, a lot of things shut down,
right,
if that happens.
Right.
But and this is I'm getting outside of my technology expertise here. But what I do know is that there is what's called forensic mapping. So there is an ability to essentially map what's on a hard drive or what's on a server, map it. And so you're getting a copy of it, right? And then so you can do that. Now that takes time. I mean, depending on how big the device is.
I've done it.
It takes time, but then you're not taking stuff out, right? You're just copying it, and it doesn't. The way that these programs work, people always worry about. Well, I mean, then you're corrupting this, and it doesn't do it. All it does is it copies what's there. It doesn't touch anything. It doesn't do anything to the files that are there. You're just copying it.
Wow. So I'm going to talk about victims. And if you got a question for DJ, 231-722-833. I appreciate the call from Houston, Texas. He's watching online, and we're live on radio. If a family feel like the police department is not doing enough to investigate a criminal case, what they feel is a criminal case?
Sure.
What kind of avenues do they have?
Well, that is it's an interesting question, and we get this every once in a while. People will call the office and say, they're upset about how police are conducting an investigation, or maybe they're not doing anything and they think they should be doing something. One of the things that if nothing has been turned, so if an investigation hasn't been turned over to my office to review, I'm sort of coming from a position of not knowing anything because we don't have anything to review. But what we try to guide families on is, certainly if you're having an issue with a particular patrol person or detective, in the larger departments, there's always the chain of command, right? The sergeant, the lieutenant, and what I usually suggest is have a conversation with the chief of police. If you're not satisfied, and I think again it goes back to this idea of communication, right? Um, it's sitting down and having that conversation, that dialogue, and I would hope that there would be some honesty and some transparency in that conversation. I mean, if the police really believe that whatever the circumstances isn't rising to the level of criminal activity, they're probably gonna tell you that, and they're gonna have that opinion. And certainly a victim's family can voice, well, we don't think you've done enough. And I would hope at that point in time it would be, well, let us show you what we've done. We've done this. We've talked to these people. We've gone and taken this particular trace evidence to the crime lab to have it analyzed to see if there's fingerprints or DNA or what have you. Laying it all out, because a lot of times, if there isn't that communication going on throughout the investigation, people don't know what's going on.
Right.
And quite honestly, depending on how big the investigation is, there's a lot happening. And detectives are focused, or patrol are focused on doing the tasks at hand. And, again, not I think in an intentional way, but, keeping folks informed of what's happening isn't necessarily in that list of priorities, even though, I think a lot of the victims' families that are diligent on just wanting to stay up to speed do a good job of reaching out and saying, hey, can you just tell me where you're at? But yeah, I mean, if beyond that, you're not satisfied with whatever the answer is, all municipalities, townships, and cities, they have a board of folks that well, there's a city manager who typically in an organization chart, the city manager sits over the police chief. The board of the council people or board of commissioners sits over, they are the oversight over the city manager and the police chief. And so there are other opportunities to express your frustration. What I will say is that sometimes folks will say, well, I want, the sheriff's department to investigate, or I want Michigan State Police to investigate. And, typically those outside agencies are hesitant to do that. Because, again, one, they have their own workloads to deal with, but two, they have this, they will have this idea and belief that if the police department did a thorough investigation, there isn't much for us to do differently. Now, on occasion, maybe if the agency's like, hey, you know what, if you guys want to, and you want a second opinion, and the state police is willing to look at it, have at it, have at it. And the one case I can think of where that happened was the Rebecca Bletch back in 2014.
Okay.
There was some complaints about how the sheriff's department was handling that case. And at the time, Sheriff Rossler reached out to the state police and said, hey, listen, are you guys willing to just kind of take a look at it? I'm okay if you do. And state police kind of gave it a once over for a second opinion. That's rare. It does happen. But, it requires a lot of cooperation. And I can certainly empathize and sympathize with folks that feel like, hey, maybe they're not getting the kind of attention or the particular incident or investigation isn't getting the attention that it's due. And, and maybe that's true. And if that is true, that's tragic. And certainly people need to be called out on it for sure.
Have you ever called a police department and said, what are you guys doing? You're dragging your leg.
Well, I think we've had conversations about, people will call and say, hey, so-and-so agency has been investigating this for the last 3 months and, we haven't heard anything. And, I think a lot of times we'll reach out to whoever the officer in charge is and say, you haven't turned this over to us to review. Where are you at? What are we waiting for? You know, and we'll have that conversation, and we'll be able to relay that to the family. Because again, sometimes it requires, they're looking for a second opinion, right? They're looking for somebody else to say maybe the same thing, but now it's coming from somebody else, and okay, therefore it's okay. So yeah, I mean that happens. And just like law enforcement respects our role and responsibilities as prosecutors, we try to do our best to respect law enforcement's roles and responsibilities when it comes to investigations. Sometimes we'll offer suggestions and opinions only because we take our trial experience as to what has happened to either detectives or patrol people when they've testified in certain circumstances and they haven't maybe done their due diligence and what happens. And we'll take that experience and try to express to them, hey, look, just so you know, I've had trials where when you didn't do this, I mean, you're the one that's going to have to answer for it. And why don't we nip that in the bud and take that issue off the table? Whether or not, for example, whether or not we find DNA,
Right.
Okay, that would be great if we do. But if we don't, at least we can say, you know what, we made an attempt, and I'll have the DNA person talk about why you might not find DNA on that particular item, whether it was out in the open and degraded by the elements, or maybe it's a surface that you're not going to necessarily leave, DNA behind. There's all sorts of factors
Right.
that come into play. So yeah, again, everything is unique, and you work within the circumstances presented to you. But there are avenues for victims' families to go. They may not like the answers they get, but ultimately, you keep going until you can't go any further.
Well, I guess we got a couple more minutes. DJ, there's a misconception that everybody in Muskegon Heights is on investigation. Everybody. Can you dispel that myth?
Yeah.
Not everybody, because they got some good people up there working.
Yeah, listen, look, again, let the investigation play out. But yeah, we're certainly not everybody in Muskegon Heights is under investigation. That I can safely say that. But again, I know it's easy for me to ask, but hard for people to do. Just be patient. Let us do our jobs, understand and know that we are going to be doing our jobs. I mean, I'm dedicating myself as well as 3 other assistant prosecutors to this process. So there'll be 4 of us sort of reviewing and going through the information that's provided to us by the state police. And I got some really smart, good people. I mean, I've always lived by this mantra. I'm gonna surround myself with the smartest people in the room, and that's exactly what I've done. I got some really smart guys helping me out on this. And so we're going to do our due diligence, but just be patient. And I guess that's a wrap. I mean, I'm getting the circle. I mean, again, this is, and look, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on air. And I know, and I'm glad everybody appreciates the position I'm in currently, which is I can't really talk a whole lot about, facts and circumstances and situations. And again, be patient, because all that stuff will come out eventually when the timing is right, when the time is right to do that. But I do appreciate everybody's understanding on that, because at the end of the day, we have a responsibility as prosecutors to protect the investigations that we receive, in order to make sure that if we are going to issue criminal charges, that we have all our tools in our tool belt, and we hold those folks that need to be held accountable. And so I appreciate the trust that you all have in me doing my job. I mean, I'm telling you, I've said this multiple times tonight, I will be doing my job in this investigation. You can rest assured of that. But again, it's going to take some time, so be patient. Let us be able to do our work efficiently but effectively. Other than that, I love this community. I love everything it stands for. I have spent more of my adult life in Muskegon County than I did where I came from. So I will fight and do everything I can in my power to make sure that everybody understands that this community, regardless of what the media might portray it as, is one of the best, if not the best, on the west side of the state. but certainly can stand up against some of the bigger cities. And we got a lot of great things going for us, and we got a lot of great people living in not only Muskegon Heights, but in Muskegon and all the other surrounding areas. I just love going to work every day. I love serving you all. And it's just an absolute pleasure. So thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to have this forum and this platform. And God bless you all. Stay safe, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
You have just heard Straight Talk with DJ Hilson. Listen live every second and